Should the safeguarding minister resign after 4 grooming gang survivors said that she had betrayed them? Get your calls in for this one now. A group of 4 abuse survivors have quit their role on the survivors panel of the grooming gang inquiry, sharing concerns about Jess Phillips and that there were tight controls on what they could say and who they could speak to. They accused the minister of betraying because they believe that she publicly contradicted their views, which took them right back to that feeling of not being believed all over again. It's reported that there were roughly 20 survivors on the panel and that the majority have not supported the accusations. Now, the Children's Minister, Josh MacAllister, told journalists that Jess Phillips has the full backing of the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister. So what do you make of this, Claudia? Do you think Jess Phillips should step down?
Yeah, I do. I think it's time. You know, I think at the moment it's stalled under her leadership. It's been heavily criticised already. And I think when you've got multiple, it's not one survivor that's accusing her of this, it's multiple. And they've said, you know, that I think when the trust is gone, it's really, really hard to rebuild that. Jess voted against the inquiry in the first place. So was she best placed to head it up anyway? Probably not.
Well, she's not heading it up. She's a safeguarding minister.
Yeah.
I suppose the argument maybe is that, yes, some of the survivors have lost faith in Jess Phillips, but not the majority.
No, look, Jess Phillips is an incredible advocate for women and girls. She has been for a very long time. The actual contention point is not necessarily about the things that the survivors had suggested. It's actually about the framing of it and does it solve the problem. When we talk about the safeguarding of women and girls, we're actually saying systemically what happens for the whole topic. And this has been an expedited inquiry that has been created in response to political pressure. And as a result, it's not going to be able to be fit and purpose to solve the problem and safeguard women and girls, which is what it's trying to do. We actually need to focus on the question as a whole. And actually, we saw many people who are protesting in the streets on behalf of women and girls be people who are perpetrators. And they're the ones that are calling, and that's the lead that we are following. The whole approach has been incorrect from the beginning. As somebody who's been fighting for the safety of women and girls for pretty much my whole adult life, I'm disgusted that that's what's driving the conversation, but I'm glad that the conversation is in discourse. What we actually need to focus on is getting it right. And Jess Phillips will get us closer to doing that overall than not. The number one thing I have to question her about right now is what now? We need to figure out how do we get this inquiry going and actually make sure that it's successful and we get as many answers as possible and move on to the wider topic of all women and girls all the time.
What now is a great question for Jess Phillips. And I suppose if she is an advocate for listening to victims, by not stepping down, is that not contradicting herself? She's not listening
always,
to the 4 victims that want her to go?
I am very much pro listening to victims all the time, especially when they've had an experience such as this. What we do have to do is not remove expertise from a space when there is a possible answer. If we are able to get this inquiry going and get an answer that everybody's happy with, I'm very happy for us to continue. We have this thing of when someone does wrong, we completely want to remove them. We lose tons of expertise. We lose good people from the process. And what are we replacing it with? People who are under-equipped to deliver what needs to be delivered. She has to deliver now.
Claudia, I mean, should we just give her more time to fix the problem? We do this all the time in politics. We don't like what somebody does. There's a call for a resignation. They go, and then, you know, once you chop the head off of a monster, what else appears? I'm not saying that this is a monster, but who else is going to replace her? Should we give her time to fix the issue?
I think when the story is the politician, rather than the actual story at hand, rather than the issue, that's when the problem occurs. Because we're talking about Jess Phillips, we should be talking about the scandal of the grooming gangs. You know, these survivors have been through absolute hell, and they're saying, you know, they initially had to get over that fear of not being listened to, and then now they're having it again. They're saying that you know, they're calling the inquiry basically a shambles. They're saying that it's a foregone conclusion. They're being told what they can and can't say, what they can and can't feel. That's not an inquiry. That's just, you know, it's just a tick box exercise.
Could it be argued, though, that this is an inquiry is a sort of unusual thing to have to go through, and it's something that the majority, I'm sure, of these victims have not had to do, because the majority of us have not had to go through one of these inquiries.
Yeah.
And there might be processes that seem a bit alien, like signing confidentiality agreements, answering questionnaires that might have questions that are a bit triggering for them, not a bit triggering, a lot triggering for them. And maybe this is something that actually we need somebody to take them through rather than
surely that's happening. Surely that's happening already, because if you have something so sensitive as this is, and you've invited 20 survivors, I'm certain they must have safeguarding things in place to walk and talk these survivors through that process. That they're not going to throw them in at the deep end and just say, oh, look, this is just, you know, expect them to know what's going on. I'm sure that they're being handheld through. It'd be
the thing is, I don't even know if people have the capacity or the skill to even know what handhold it is. The actual manner of this conversation and how it's being done is not safeguarding. And bringing this up to these people in a triggering way, then being discussed in the House of Commons in a particular way, is not safeguarding. So how much hand-holding is being done for these women, I doubt very much. But that's not necessarily about the government. Sorry, very quickly. I don't think that's about the government. I think that's about how we all look at survivors, how we all look at people who are experiencing very difficult things. We just think it's like, yeah, but the bigger mission is this. This is all about political expediency. This is not about getting things done. And the noise around it is really, really problematic.
But if the safeguarding minister isn't doing her job of safeguarding, then why should she be allowed to stay in that role?
Because Jess Phillips' ability to keep those women safe in this particular environment is minimised by just even her role. Like, you have to understand, if the media start having a conversation around the topic, the conversation goes way beyond anything that Jess Phillips can actually manage. The whole point and the contention of it is what the conversation will be when this investigation happens and it's targeted at a very specific group. But what does that do for everything else that's going on around it? She can't safeguard them from the media. This conversation would never happen for any other inquiry ever in the history of UK politics.
The question is not the media. They're not stepping down in this inquiry because of the media. They're stepping down because of lots of different things. They got a questionnaire that asked whether this should be expanded out to other forms of abuse, which they were upset about because it was always going to be narrowed to grooming gangs in their mind. They were upset because they feel that Jess Phillips in an interview contradicted some of the comments that they made, which made them feel not listened to. And they're stepping down because two people who were appointed to potentially be chairs of this inquiry, one was from the police and the other one was from the social services, two institutes that really let them down at the time of their abuse. So this is not the media, this is safeguarding them from the process itself. And Jess Phillips appears to have failed in that.
But what happens is the conversation gets dominated by that particular point rather than what are we doing now. This is not creating pressure for more things to be done. It focuses a pressure on getting to the outcome that is specifically to frame grooming gangs from a particular ethnicity. As I said, if we're focusing on women and girls, this policy should be straightforward. The inquiry is very, very clear because the information already exists where the failings are. So actually doing this is about how do we collect all that information together, create a new view of where the failings are and actually implement those things. But it's not. It's about what the ethnicity is, what culture are they, what religion are they. This is absolute noise.
If that's important to the girls.
If the failings were on the police and the social services and they're the ones heading up the inquiry, it's like marking their own homework. If there's failings within those departments...
The failings aren't just because the culture of the police. The failings are because there is no way to communicate between different agencies. That's a failing, but that's not a failing that's perpetuated on one individual. So what I'm saying, it cannot just be about what the culture of the perpetrators are. It has to be all the systems in place. Where has it gone wrong? That particular part is one part of it that's being centred.
I want to go to the phones. Ola from Durham, what's your view on this?
I don't think Jess. Sorry, I can't remember her role. I don't
Jess
think
Phillips,
should, be made.
safeguarding minister.
Phillips, sorry. Yes, the safeguarding minister. I do not think asking her to leave is going to help us get to the bottom of this issue. I think it's such an issue that's been going on for so long, and I think majority of the public just felt a lot what that should have been done was not done. It's taken so long to get to this point, and I just think it's disgusting because when we look at the UK, don't forget, people on the outside are looking at us. And I think we forget how important we are in the world when it comes to freedoms, when it comes to democracy. Mm-hmm. And to then hear that girls are abused on such a wide scale and the police did nothing or were scared to do something, I think it's a national embarrassment. We've now got to this point where there's an inquiry and we're bickering about whether Jess should leave. And please, I'm a woman. And I'm in no way diminishing the feelings of the victims. And this is why we say they are brave to have come out. Every time things are going to happen to trigger them. It could be at work, it could be in the supermarket. But we cannot keep replacing people like a knee-jerk reaction thing.
But you've said two contradictory things there, and I appreciate you get the importance of this inquiry, and you don't want to slow it down. I appreciate that. But you've said we're bickering over somebody's position, and then you've said I'm not going to underestimate or undermine the voice of the survivors. Well, in calling it bickering, some would say you are undermining their voice because it is the survivors themselves that are calling for her to step down. They don't. The trust is broken there, and when trust is broken, are we really going to get everything we need from those survivors?
And in the same vein, I would say that it's hard, but the reality is we can't get everything. We cannot. But I think the fact that we've got to this point where we're having an inquiry, the survivors, I think, let me choose a better word, it's going to be a long process, but I'm hoping it's not going to be as long as the time they've had to wait. So things are going to trigger, and there should be more for safeguarding. And until you go through an experience, you would never know how the people that have gone through it feel. So I think there should be a talk about what more can we do to safeguard you. It's easy to think you're safeguarding someone until that thing triggers them. So there needs to be a discussion, but at the same time, it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We shouldn't, because it's going to set us back.
So maybe get the survivors in the same room as Jess Phillips, maybe Baroness Casey, and find a solution to their concerns and their problems. And maybe just an apology to Jess for making it sound, or because I'm sure it was unintentional, contradicting what they had said and making them feel unlistened to. But maybe that is a solution, Ola. Thank you very much for your call. Pat from Merseyside, what's your view on this?
Oh, good morning, Storm. Good morning, panel. Well, first of all, when I heard Jess Phillips on her first speech, she seemed to be without any sort of remorse for these people, for these women.
Right.
And the second speech, she seemed to be apologetic for herself in what she was saying. That she stood by them and blah, blah. But I don't think, really, she seemed to have the feeling, it seems to be like another committee meeting to her, that, OK, I'm chair of, but don't expect a lot from me. That was the impression I got.
Oh, Pat,
and these women are standing up. They're standing up for the people that are getting this treatment by these grooming gangs. And it takes a lot to stand up and be counted. But then they put a policeman and a social worker at the head of it.
Well, they nominated them to chair it. Just to confirm,
they've been let down previously by those sort of people.
We have discussed that. They put them up to be nominated for the chairs. There were two potential chairs. One of them was a former social worker, and one of them had worked in the police, and that is one of the concerns. But it's interesting that you criticise Jess Phillips for not appearing to have very much empathy for these individuals. Jess Phillips is known to have done a huge amount of work with victims of abuse, with domestic violence, with stopping trafficking. She's worked at a Women's Aid before she even became a politician. I mean, this is a real passion of Jess Phillips, and one of the reasons that she became a politician in the first place. But you don't believe it? You don't think she has enough empathy?
I don't doubt that, but that was before she was a minister. Now she is a minister. She's a step above that. So she has to watch her P's and Q's. And I think she's erring on the side of, oh, this could stir up a bit of racial tension, so I dare not tip my feet into the water.
Interesting,
That's
Pat.
my impression.
Thank you very much for sharing
I think what it speaks to is a serious amount of frustration in trying to deliver this inquiry and how difficult it has been. There are so many inquiries that have happened historically, and they're clearly led by someone who's a QC, who's very experienced, and they're able to gather the information and build a report and give recommendations. This feels like it's probably not the right format for what it is that they're trying to do. But in trying to centre women, which I do think is really important to hear from, I think they may have maybe misstepped in terms of how they have adopted adopted a structure to find out the right information, and the potential scope creep, which is like, we need to actually answer the wider question, because this isn't just a cultural challenge that we have. This is happening. All men are participating, all types of men are participating in these behaviours. We have to understand it. We have to be able to legislate against it and come up with real recommendations, not for a particular type of community in a particular type of time. It has to go broader than that, and we need it soon.
The survivors would disagree with you on that, and that is the very point that the survivors say their ethnicity, their culture and their background is being undermined in terms of their motivations for acting out this abuse. Sheila from Wiltshire, I've only got a minute or two left in this. What's your thoughts?
Yes, I think that Jess Phillips should go. What she's done in the past has been great. I believe in Keir Starmer that we have an autocratic leader. He didn't want there to be a further looking into it, and neither did Jess Phillips.
She wanted local investigations rather than a national investigation. But Keir Starmer is very much backing Jess Phillips.
Yes, he is, because he's an autocratic leader, and Jess Phillips and all the front benches, they do exactly what Keir wants them to do, in my opinion. The Labour Party is not democratic. There isn't free speech within the Labour Party at all. Okay. Only a little while ago, members did create... they were not happy with things, so they did say something. This is all in Labour wards. It can't be looked at by the people there, and it needs to have a judge. And these women that have left, that have come away and said they can't, they have been shut up within the inquiry. They have not been allowed really to say what they want. They have been curtailed. And I believe actually that Jess hasn't shown. She's not been empathetic at all. I'm really disappointed in her. OK,
Sheila, I hear what you're saying, that actually too much politics is being brought into this. Part of the reason they don't want to have a judge, Baroness Casey, who's seen as fairly independent, had suggested that it shouldn't be a judge because it would take longer, and this should be done as quickly as possible. But I also understand the criticisms of not having someone that used to be in the police or in the social services heading it up. Sheila, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on that. Don't forget, later we're going to be asking your thoughts on whether grandparents have a duty, and the key word here is duty, to help with childcare.